materials, why are Muller chokes advantageous?
So basically all the choke tubes that are made out there, they incrementally constrict them by 5/1000ths of an inch for the most part. So cylinder is 0, even though most choke manufacturers make them negative, which is larger than your bore, which does absolutely nothing. It basically just covers your threads in the barrel. Once the shot string leaves the bore, it doesn't know if it's 1/1000th of an inch larger or 10 inches larger. Okay, so basically that's just a marketing scam. It's a waste of money. Then you have skeet choke, which is usually 5/1000ths constriction from the bore diameter, which we talked about bore diameters earlier. Improved cylinder, or IC, is 10/1000ths. Light modified is 15/1000ths. Modified is 20/1000ths, and so forth. Okay, so basically thousandths of an inch constriction is grossly secondary to the geometry inside that choke for that particular gun. So every single gun pattern's totally different with no choke tube in it at all. So if you take, let's say, a Beretta mobile choke gun that measures 720 thousandths of an inch bore, and you take a Browning that measures 745 thousandths of an inch bore, you take the choke tubes out of them and you shoot at a piece of paper at 30 yards, the mobile choke Beretta will look like it has a light modified choke in the gun. It'll shoot about a 30-inch circle with no choke at all. You shoot the Browning at that same sheet of paper, it'll cover a 6-foot sheet of paper. So you can't put, let's say, 10/1000ths of an inch constriction in both of those guns and call them improved cylinder. It's not real, it doesn't work, okay? So that's the reason I created my chokes. Back in 1990, when I started shooting clay targets for the most part competitively, I realized that all chokes were basically different. And I also realized that every single choke patterned differently in every single gun, even if they measured the same. So if I took all the competitors' chokes that were out there and they were all, let's say, 10/1000ths improved cylinder from the bore diameter, and I shot them on paper, they all varied greatly. So then I started making my own chokes, and I found out that every single thing that I changed created a change on the pattern, the paper, the shot string length, deviation, shot to shot, everything. So then as I started developing things and I started testing things, I started changing taper length, parallel length, radius blend between the two, the gas skirt clearance, overall length, and of course constriction amount in thousandths of an inch. And what I learned very quickly was that thousandths of an inch constriction was grossly secondary to the geometry inside the choke for that particular gun, because every single gun likes something different. And the reason that it's different is because if the bore diameter is different, you know, the diameter of the shot strings coming down, if you make the same parallel length and the same taper length and the same constriction amount and the same gas skirt clearance and the same surface finish and the same overall length, they obviously cannot end the same if they start different. So if they start different, they're going to end different. So I realized that being an aerospace defense manufacturer. So basically what I started doing was playing around with different geometries. I started with one gun, changed the geometry, everything you can imagine, like I just mentioned. Every time I made a single change, I would shoot 12 more patterns on 12 more sheets of paper. I would set up a high-speed photography camera from a company I hired. We would look at shot strings together. I would also shoot at a target at that same exact distance as the paper and see how the target quality break was, or the break of the target. Once I got it to the point where I felt it was best, I drew the blueprint from that gun, for their chokes, moved to the next gun, and started all over. So basically I fired about 12,000 rounds in 2.5 years through 20 different guns and 13 bore diameters. So that's how I developed the chokes. So every single Muller choke has a different geometry in it based on how the metallurgy and the machining of that barrel liked it best. So that's now that has to do with the performance. The other thing that's different is, of course, like we discussed, my materials being light, being so light that it feels like there's no choke screwed into the barrel, which brings back the natural pointability of the gun. Because when gun manufacturers make the barrels, they weigh them and balance the gun before the chokes are cut into the barrel. So what happens is when they remove the material and add a heavy choke that is heavier than what they removed from the barrel, it throws off the balance point of the gun, which means when you go to move the gun, it does not feel the way it should have. It doesn't point like a Ferrari, it moves like a brick. Okay, so basically by reducing the weight of my choke tubes, putting them on the end of the barrel, it's almost like there's no choke in the gun. It brings back that natural pointability which the gun was intended to be felt like. Any other question?